Alexandra Morgan woke up at 11:30 a.m. in her apartment in East Austin. 38 degrees in the shade, a typical October temperature in this part of Texas. She stretched, feeling a slight headache from the night before, and reached for her phone on the bedside table. 7 messages. 4 from potential clients via a secure app, 2 from Brian, and 1 from Dr. Harris, reminding her of tomorrow's appointment. Alex sat on the edge of the bed, massaging her temples. The mirror opposite reflected a slender woman with shoulder-length brown hair, regular features, and tired green eyes. Looking at her, few would guess what a difficult path she had taken to become who she was now. Alex's apartment was a model of modern minimalism. Alex was truly successful. It's just that her profession wasn't one she could openly talk about at family dinners or alumni reunions. She made coffee and opened her laptop. The first thing she did was check her profile on the Elite Companions platform, where she worked under the name Serena. The photos were professional but not vulgar. The description emphasized her education, a bachelor's degree in psychology from the University of Texas, and her interests, art, theater, and travel. The price was $500 per hour and $2,000 per night. In Austin, that was at the high end of the market. In 3 years on the job, Alex had learned to read people from their messages, weed out potentially dangerous clients, and create an atmosphere of trust with those she chose. Her client base consisted mainly of middle-aged businessmen, politicians, lawyers, people who valued discretion as much as she did. The first message was from Robert, a regular client for over a year, a divorce lawyer going through his own painful divorce. "Hi, Serena. Tough week in court. Can we meet on Friday? Same place, same time?" Alex quickly replied with a confirmation. Robert was safe, predictable, polite, never crossing the line. The second message made her wary. A new user, profile created just 2 days ago. "Hello, beautiful. Want to meet tonight? I'm willing to pay double the rate for special services." Alex grimaced. Messages like this always made her uneasy. She quickly blocked the user. The third message was more promising. It was detailed, polite, and came from someone with a well-filled-out profile and positive reviews. "Good afternoon, Serena. My name is David. I'm a doctor at the local hospital. I'm looking for an intelligent companion for a corporate event next Saturday. Payment according to your price list plus expenses. If you're interested, I'd be happy to discuss the details." Alex smiled. Clients like this were every escort's dream. Professional, respectful, with clearly defined boundaries. She started to type a reply when her phone rang. "Alex, hi sunshine." Brian's cheerful voice rang out. "How are you? You looked tired yesterday." Brian Lee was the only person in Austin who knew Alex's true story. They had met 4 years ago at the Rainbow Bar in the city's LGBT+ district, when Alex was just beginning her transition. Brian was a former sex worker who had managed to escape that world, and now worked as a bartender at the same bar. He became like an older brother to Alex, a mentor, and the only friend she trusted completely. "Hi, Brian. Everything's fine, just a lot of work," Alex replied, sipping her coffee. "I know the feeling. Listen, I have some information about the guy who harassed you last week. Jason from security says he showed up at the bar again, asking about you." Alex tensed up. A week ago, during a rare night off at Rainbow, she had been harassed by a drunk patron who, as it turned out later, had recognized her from the platform. The situation almost got out of hand until Brian intervened. "What did he want?" Alex asked, feeling a familiar sense of unease. Apparently, he still thinks he can get for free what others pay for. But don't worry, Jason explained to him that he's not welcome here. Just be careful, okay? It was a constant reminder of the risks of her job. Alex had developed strict safety rules over the years. Never meet clients at home. Always choose hotels in safe areas. Always check clients' documents. Always tell Brian where she is meeting and with whom. But even with all these precautions, the danger remained. "I'm always careful," Alex said. "By the way, I have an appointment with Dr. Harris tomorrow. Would you like to join me for lunch afterwards?" Sure. How is she, by the way? Still helping you adjust? Dr. Elizabeth Harris was a psychologist who specialized in working with transgender patients. Alex had started seeing her 3 years ago, in the early stages of her transition, and had continued to see her ever since. She was one of the few people besides Brian who knew Alex's full story, including her work. Yes, she's helpful. We discussed the difficulties, especially those related to work. The main difficulty they had been discussing in recent months concerned the issue of disclosure. Should Alex tell her clients about her past? On the one hand, honesty was a matter of ethics. On the other, it was a matter of safety. There were too many stories of transgender women who had been beaten or even killed when men discovered the truth. In 3 years of working, Alex had never told a client about her past. She had gender confirmation surgery 2 years ago, and now even intimate moments didn't give away her secret. She convinced herself that it was a necessary lie for the sake of safety, but deep down, it ate away at her. Alex, are you there? Brian's voice brought her back to reality. Yes, sorry. I'm looking through messages from clients. Anything interesting? A doctor wants to take me to a corporate event. Seems decent. Okay, but double-check him anyway. And don't forget to let me know the details. After the conversation ended, Alex returned to her messages. The fourth was from another new user. The profile was recently created but filled out in detail. The photo showed a man in his mid-30s with a serious face and kind eyes. Name, Klaus Vber. The message was polite and well-written. Good afternoon, Serena. My name is Klaus. I recently moved to Austin for work and haven't had a chance to get to know the city yet. I am looking for an intelligent woman for a pleasant evening of dinner and conversation. I am willing to discuss the terms in private messages. Sincerely. Something about this message seemed sincere to Alex. She opened Klaus's profile. Age, 35. Profession, construction contractor, recently divorced. Moved to Austin from a small town in northern Texas. No reviews yet, which was natural for a new user. Alex stared at the photo for a long time. The man's face expressed a kind of weariness, but not cynicism. More like loneliness. She knew that expression. She had seen it in the mirror in the first months after moving to Austin, when she didn't yet know who she wanted to be. She started to type a reply, but stopped. Something made her think. Maybe it was intuition, or maybe it was just fatigue from constantly having to be cautious. Klaus seemed ordinary, not like most of her clients, who were used to buying whatever they wanted. There was something almost timid about his message. Alex decided to respond, but with the usual precautions. Hello, Klaus. Thank you for your message. I would be happy to have lunch with you and show you Austin. My terms: meeting in a public place, payment in advance, no additional services without prior discussion. If that's okay with you, we can schedule a meeting for this week. She sent the message and immediately felt a familiar uneasiness. Every new client was a risk. Every meeting could be her last if something went wrong. But that was the price she paid for the life she had chosen. The price for independence, for the opportunity to be herself, for control over her own destiny. Alex spent the rest of the day doing her usual things. The gym, where she kept in shape. The beauty salon, where she got her nails done and her hair styled. Shopping at an expensive boutique, where the salespeople knew her as a successful businesswoman and never asked unnecessary questions. In the evening, she met Brian at Rainbow. The bar was filled with the usual Thursday crowd. Young gay men, lesbian couples, a few transgender people of various ages. It was a place where Alex could relax, not play a role, just be herself. How was your day? Brian asked, handing her her favorite mojito. Fine. I have a few potential meetings next week. How are you feeling? You seem pensive. Alex shrugged. Sometimes I get tired of this game, from having to be constantly on guard, calculating everything. I know the feeling, but remember, it's temporary. You're saving money, getting an education. Soon, you'll be able to do what you really want. What if I don't remember what I want anymore? Brian looked at her intently. Do you want to talk about it? Alex shook her head. She wasn't ready to discuss the growing sense of emptiness that had filled her last few months. Success at work didn't bring satisfaction. Money didn't make her happy. And the constant need to hide the truth about herself was becoming an increasingly heavy burden. Around midnight, as she and Brian were getting ready to leave, her phone vibrated. It was a message from Klaus. Serena, your terms are perfectly acceptable to me. Would Saturday be convenient for you? I suggest Austin Grill in the city center at 7 p.m. I'll pay in advance, as you requested. Alex showed the message to Brian. What do you think? Seems fine. It's a good restaurant, a busy place, but be careful anyway. I'm always careful, Alex replied, typing her confirmation of the meeting. She couldn't have known that this message would set off a chain of events that would change not only her life, but the lives of everyone around her. Klaus Vber seemed like a normal client, just another lonely man looking for company. But behind this outward simplicity lay deep trauma and prejudice that would soon surface in the most tragic way. Klaus Vber sat in his empty apartment in the suburb of Cedar Park, staring at his laptop screen. 6 months had passed since Melissa had taken the last of her belongings, leaving him with only empty rooms and a feeling of complete failure. The 2-story house they had bought on credit 7 years ago now seemed like a museum of shattered dreams of family happiness. On the kitchen table lay the divorce papers, signed 2 weeks ago. The official end of a 12-year relationship, the last 5 of which had been marriage. Melissa took half of everything, including their mutual friends, who unanimously sided with her. Klaus has changed, she told her lawyer. He's become withdrawn and aggressive. I no longer feel safe around him. Klaus knew she was right. After his father's death 2 years ago, something inside him had broken. Hans Vber was an old-school Iron Man, a German immigrant who had built a construction company from scratch and raised his son with strictness and discipline. A man must be strong, he would repeat. A man does not show weakness. A man provides for his family and protects what is his. These principles had been drummed into Klaus since childhood. In the small town of Fredericksburg where he grew up, such views were the norm. Men worked with their hands, women ran the household, and any deviation from traditional roles was viewed with suspicion. When a boy who acted like a girl appeared in their high school, Klaus and the other students teased him. It wasn't out of malice. It was just the accepted norm. After his father's death, Klaus inherited a construction company, but he couldn't manage it. Orders declined, he had to lay off workers, and eventually he sold the business to a large corporation. This decision destroyed his relationship with Melissa for good. Your father built this business his whole life, and you just gave up, she yelled during one of their last arguments. Moving to Austin was an attempt to start over. Here, he got a job as a foreman at a large construction company, rented an apartment in a quiet suburb, and tried to figure out who he was without his family and his father's business. At 35, he felt like a teenager stepping out into the big world for the first time. Austin struck him as very different from his hometown. The liberal atmosphere, the diversity of people, the openness to different lifestyles, it was all new and a little scary. Klaus saw couples on the streets who would have caused a scandal in Fredericksburg, and he didn't know how to feel about it. His upbringing told him one thing, but his mind told him that the world was more complicated than he had previously thought. Loneliness weighed particularly heavily on him in the evenings. His colleagues at work were friendly, but kept their distance. Klaus didn't know how to make friends. In his hometown, everyone had known him since childhood, but here he had to learn how to socialize all over again. His attempts to meet women in bars ended in failure. He was too serious for casual flirting and too traumatized by divorce for serious relationships. It was on one such evening, sitting at home with a bottle of beer and browsing the news on the internet, that Klaus stumbled upon an advertisement for an escort service website. At first, he closed the page, feeling ashamed. His father had taught him that a real man doesn't pay for female attention. But a week later, he returned to the site. Klaus studied the profiles for a long time, not daring to write to anyone. Most of the women seemed too young or too forward to him. He wasn't just looking for physical intimacy. He needed company, someone to talk to who wouldn't judge him or demand commitment. Serena's profile attracted him precisely because of her intelligence, education, interests in art and theater, elegant photos without vulgarity. She looked like a woman you could have dinner with and talk about something more than the weather. Klaus spent 3 days gathering his courage before writing to her. When Serena's reply came, Klaus felt a strange sense of relief. Her tone was professional, but warm. She didn't ask awkward questions or demand details about his personal life. The terms were clear and fair. A meeting in a public place, payment in advance, no coercion. On Friday evening, Klaus transferred the money to the account Serena had specified and felt a mixture of excitement and shame. He had never paid for female company before and wasn't sure he was doing the right thing. But the alternative, another evening alone, seemed worse. Saturday dragged on endlessly. Klaus tidied up his apartment, which was already spotless, and went to the gym, where he spent 2 hours trying to calm his nerves. By evening, he had changed his clothes 3 times, choosing between a formal suit and more casual attire. In the end, he settled on dark jeans and a white shirt, elegant enough for a nice restaurant, but not too formal. On the way to downtown Austin, Klaus thought about what he would talk to Serena about. His life in recent months had seemed boring and depressing to him. Work, gym, TV, sleep, and so on and so forth. What interesting things could he tell an educated woman? Maybe he should ask about her hobbies. Or would it be better to talk about the city, since he was new here? Austin Grill was located in the heart of the city, in a lively area full of restaurants and bars. Klaus parked a block away from the restaurant and sat in his car for a few minutes, gathering his thoughts. Through the window, he could see people entering and leaving the restaurant. Couples, groups of friends, business meetings. Just a typical Saturday night in the big city. He entered the restaurant at exactly 7 o'clock and told the hostess that he was waiting for his date. The table was reserved under the name Serena Morgan. Klaus ordered water and waited nervously, glancing periodically at the entrance. At 7:05, a woman entered the restaurant who matched the photos on her profile, but was even more beautiful in real life. Chestnut hair, an elegant black dress, a confident gait. She looked around, and their eyes met. Klaus got up from the table, feeling his heartbeat quicken. "Klaus?" she asked, approaching the table. Her voice was soft, with a slight Texas accent. "Yes, it's me. Serena?" He held out his hand to shake hers, but she gave him a light hug, like an old friend. "It's very nice to meet you," she said, sitting down across from him. "Sorry I'm late. The traffic in the city center is terrible." "No problem. I just got here myself," lied Klaus, who had arrived 20 minutes early. The first half hour of conversation was awkward. Klaus felt uncomfortable, not knowing how to talk to a woman he was paying for her time. Serena was professional and tactful, steering the conversation into safe territory. Work, her impressions of Austin, plans for the weekend. "You said you moved here recently. How do you like the city?" she asked, sipping her wine. "It's very different from where I grew up," Klaus replied. "Everyone knew each other from birth. Here, you can be anyone you want to be. That's one of the advantages of big cities. Anonymity gives you freedom," Serena agreed. "What brought you here?" Klaus paused, choosing his words. "Divorce. I needed a fresh start." "I'm sorry. That's always hard." "Yes, especially when you realize you don't know who you are without the other person." Serena looked at him intently. "Who do you want to be?" The question caught Klaus off guard. No one had asked him that in all the months since the divorce. Everyone had asked how he was feeling, but no one had asked who he wanted to be. "I don't know," he replied honestly. "All my life I was my father's son, then Melissa's husband. Now I'm just Klaus, and I don't really understand what that means." Maybe this is your chance to find out, Serena said softly. By the end of dinner, Klaus felt more relaxed. Serena turned out to be not only beautiful, but also an intelligent conversationalist. She listened attentively, asked thoughtful questions, and shared her own observations about life in Austin. When it was time to part, Klaus didn't want the evening to end. "Thank you for a wonderful evening," he said, walking her to a taxi. "I haven't had such a good time in a long time." "I enjoyed it too," Serena replied. "Will we see each other again?" "Of course, if you don't mind." The next day, Klaus sent her a message through the platform. "Serena, thank you for last night. You helped me feel human again. I'd like to meet again if you have time." The reply came a few hours later. "Klaus, I enjoyed our conversation too. I can suggest a walk around the city on Wednesday evening if you like. I'll show you some interesting places." That's how their correspondence began. At first, the messages were formal, concerning only plans for meetings and logistics. But gradually, the tone became more personal. Klaus talked about his work, his attempts to settle into a new city, and his thoughts on life. Serena responded with understanding and support, sometimes sharing her own thoughts on change and new beginnings. "You know what surprises me about Austin?" Klaus wrote after their third meeting. "People here aren't afraid to be different. In my hometown, everyone had to fit a certain mold." "Would you like to be different?" Serena asked. "Sometimes I think about it. My father always said that a man should be strong, not show his emotions, always know what to do. But what if that's not me? Maybe strength is about being honest with yourself?" These conversations awakened something new in Klaus. Serena didn't judge his doubts or demand that he live up to any expectations. With her, he could talk about his fears and insecurities without fear of appearing weak. By the end of the second week of their acquaintance, Klaus realized that he thought of Serena as more than just an escort. He looked forward to their meetings, reread her messages, and caught himself imagining what their life would be like if they had met under different circumstances. This realization frightened him. Klaus knew that their relationship had clear boundaries. He paid, she provided services. But deep down, he was beginning to hope for something more. Maybe she also felt a connection between them. Maybe this was the beginning of a real relationship. "Serena," he wrote on Friday evening, "I want to confess something. Our meetings have become more than just company for me. I'm starting to have real feelings for you. I know this complicates things, but I couldn't not say anything." The reply kept him waiting all day. When it finally arrived, Klaus felt a mixture of relief and disappointment. "Klaus, your honesty means a lot to me. I also appreciate our communication and the time we spend together. But I have to be honest with you. My job requires me to maintain certain boundaries. Maybe we should talk about this when we meet." They scheduled a meeting for Saturday. Klaus spent the entire week thinking about what he would say to Serena. He wanted to convince her to give their relationship a chance, to go beyond professional services. In his mind, it was the beginning of a new life, a life where he could be happy and understood. Klaus didn't understand that Serena was struggling with her own demons, that each of their meetings intensified her guilt over her deception, that behind her understanding and support lay a secret that could destroy everything that had developed between them. He saw her as the perfect woman, beautiful, intelligent, understanding. He couldn't imagine that someone who seemed so honest and open to him was hiding the most important truth about herself from him. Saturday began with rain drumming on the windows of Alex's apartment in East Austin. She woke up with a heavy feeling in her chest. Today, she was going to meet with Klaus to discuss his confession of love. In the 2 weeks since they had met, something had changed. What had started as a normal professional relationship had gradually grown into something more complicated and dangerous. Alex sat in front of the mirror, studying her reflection. 2 years of surgery and 3 years of hormone therapy had done their job. Even she sometimes forgot about her past. But Klaus didn't know her story, and with each meeting, the deception became more and more difficult. Last night, She had a long conversation with Dr. Harris about the dilemma that had been tormenting her for the last few days. "What if I tell him the truth?" Alex asked. "What if he can accept me for who I am?" "What if he can't?" the doctor replied with a question. "Are you prepared for that possibility?" The statistics were relentless. According to the research Alex had studied, violence against transgender women often occurred at the moment of disclosure. Men felt betrayed, their masculinity was questioned, and the reaction could be unpredictable. But Klaus seemed different. In their conversations, he had shown understanding and empathy, talking about his desire to become a better, more open person. Maybe he was ready for the truth? Alex dressed in casual clothes, jeans and a sweater. Today they planned to just walk around the city, and she wanted to look more natural, less formal. This was also part of her inner struggle, the desire to show Klaus her true self, not just her professional image. They met at Zilker Park, a popular place for walks with a view of downtown Austin. Klaus was already waiting for her at the entrance, pacing nervously. When he saw Alex, his face broke into a smile, but his eyes betrayed his anxiety. "Hi," he said, hugging her. The hug lasted a little longer than usual, and Alex could feel his heart beating faster. "Hi, Klaus. How are you?" "Nervous," he admitted honestly. "I've been thinking about our conversation all week." They began to walk slowly along the path by the lake. For the first half hour, they talked about trivial things, the weather, their plans for the weekend, work. Alex could feel the tension in the air, knowing that they were both avoiding the main topic. "Serena," Klaus finally said, stopping at a bench overlooking the water, "we really need to talk." They sat down next to each other, and Alex braced herself for a difficult conversation. "I know our relationship started out as a business one," Klaus began, choosing his words carefully. "But for me, it has become something more. I think about you constantly. I look forward to our meetings as the most important events of the week." Alex remained silent, not knowing how to respond. "I understand that it's difficult," he continued. "Your job, the boundaries you have to maintain. But I want to try to build something real. I want to get to know you not as Serena, but as who you really are." These words pierced Alex like a knife. Klaus was asking to know her true self, but he had no idea how complicated that truth was. "Klaus," she said quietly, "you don't understand what you're asking." "Then explain it to me." Alex looked at the water where the ducks were swimming, ignoring the human drama on the shore. "Some things are better left in the past. But the past is part of who we are. I told you about my divorce, about my problems with my father. Why can't you trust me?" "Because your past doesn't make you a target for violence," Alex wanted to say, but she remained silent. "I need time," she said instead. Klaus nodded, though his disappointment was obvious. "Okay, but know that whatever happened in your past, it won't change how I feel about you." If only he knew how wrong he was, Alex thought. The rest of the walk passed in a lighter atmosphere. They talked about books, movies, plans for the future. Klaus talked about his dream of starting his own construction company, and Alex talked about her desire to one day work as a psychologist, helping people in difficult situations. "Why psychology?" Klaus asked. "I want to help people find themselves," Alex replied, without adding that she was particularly interested in gender psychology. In the evening, they had dinner at a small cafe in the South Lake area. The atmosphere was intimate and romantic. Klaus took Alex's hand across the table, and she didn't pull away. "I want you to know," he said, looking into her eyes. "These 2 weeks have been the best of my life in a long time. You've helped me feel alive again." Alex squeezed his hand. "It's been a special time for me too." That was true. Over the years of working as an escort, she had learned to separate her personal feelings from her professional duties. But with Klaus, the boundaries were blurring. He was sincere, vulnerable, real. and she was beginning to feel something for him that went far beyond a working relationship. After dinner, Klaus walked her to her car. "See you next week?" he asked. "Of course." He kissed her, gently, almost timidly. Alex responded to the kiss, feeling a mixture of desire and guilt. On Monday, they exchanged messages. Klaus wrote, "I can't stop thinking about Saturday, about that kiss. I want to see you again." Alex replied, "I'm thinking about it too. Shall we meet on Wednesday?" But Wednesday brought the first warning signs. They met at a bar in the city center, and Klaus seemed tense. "Is everything okay?" Alex asked. "Yeah, just something weird happened at work today," he said, taking a sip of beer. "One of the guys said he saw you at a bar in the gay district. He said you were hugging some guy." Alex felt a chill. It must have been at Rainbow, where she had met Brian. "He was a friend," she said quickly. "We just talked." "At a gay bar?" Klaus's voice took on a suspicious tone. "I have friends in the LGBT community. It's normal." Klaus paused, twirling the bottle in his hands. Of course it's normal. It just seemed strange. The rest of the evening was tense. Alex felt that Klaus was studying her more closely, asking questions he hadn't asked before, about her family, her past relationships, why she had chosen this particular job. After that meeting, Alex had a sleepless night. Brian immediately noticed her state when she walked into the bar the next day. "What's wrong?" he asked, pouring her the usual mojito. "Klaus is starting to suspect something," Alex admitted. "Someone saw us here together." "And what did you tell him?" "That you're my friend, but he was asking strange questions." Brian frowned. "Maybe it's time to stop seeing him. It's getting dangerous." "I can't," Alex whispered. "Brian, I'm in love with him." "Damn," Brian exhaled. "Alex, this could end badly." "I know, but maybe if I tell him the truth, he'll understand." "What if he doesn't? What if he reacts badly?" Alex didn't answer. She knew the risks, but her heart told her otherwise. They met twice more the following week. Klaus became more persistent in his questions, more attentive to details. He noticed that Alex avoided talking about her childhood, that she had no photos from her school years, that she evaded questions about her family. "Serena," he said during their 5th meeting, as they sat in his car after dinner, "I feel like you're hiding something from me." "Everyone hides something," Alex replied, trying to remain calm. "But I want to be honest with you. I want you to be honest with me too. Sometimes honesty can hurt." Klaus turned to face her. "What could be so terrible that you can't tell me?" Alex looked into his eyes, kind but insistent. She could see growing suspicion mixed with pain at the realization that the person he loved didn't trust him. "Klaus, there are things in my past that could change how you feel about me. Try me," he said quietly. Alex felt like she was standing on the edge of a precipice. One word, and everything would change. Either he would accept her, or she didn't want to think about the alternative. "Not today," she said, opening the car door. "I need time." Klaus didn't try to stop her, but she could see in the rearview mirror that he sat in the car for a long time, staring into space. At home, Alex called Dr. Harris. "I think he suspects something," she said, "and I don't know what to do." "What are your options?" the doctor asked. "Tell the truth or end the relationship. Which are you more afraid of?" Alex thought for a moment. "I'm afraid of losing him, but I'm even more afraid of his reaction if he finds out the truth." "Alex, remember, your safety is more important than any relationship." But late at night, lying in bed, Alex wasn't thinking about safety. She thought about how Klaus looked at her, how he held her hand, how he talked about the future. For the first time in years, she felt like a complete woman, loved and desired. Maybe it was worth the risk. Maybe Klaus was the one who could accept her completely, with all her complicated history. She didn't know that, at the same time, Klaus was lying in his apartment, tormented by his own demons. Suspicions gnawed at him, mixed with the fear of losing the only person who made him feel alive. He loved Serena, but he felt her slipping away from him, hiding behind a wall of secrets. And somewhere deep inside, in the part of him that had been raised on his father's lessons that real men always know the truth, something dark was growing anger at the feeling that he was being deceived, fear that he would end up a fool again, like in his marriage to Melissa. Klaus didn't understand the nature of his suspicions, but his intuition told him that Serena was not who she seemed to be, and that thought both frightened and angered him. The storm was approaching, and neither of them was ready for what the moment of truth would bring. Friday, October 23rd. Alex woke up with a firm decision. Today, she would tell Klaus the truth. Yesterday's conversation with Dr. Harris convinced her that she couldn't put it off any longer. Secrets were eating away at their relationship from the inside, and Klaus deserved honesty. Remember, Dr. Harris said, choose a safe place, a public place where there are people, and have a backup plan. Alex arranged to meet Klaus at the Hilton Hotel in downtown Austin. She booked the room herself, in case the conversation dragged on and they needed privacy. It was a breach of her safety rules, but she felt that such an important conversation could not be held in a restaurant or cafe. She spent an hour choosing what to wear, settling on a simple blue dress, elegant but not too formal. The mirror reflected a beautiful woman, and only she knew the journey she had taken to become that woman. Before leaving, Alex texted Brian, "Meeting Klaus at the Hilton, room 1247. I'm going to tell him everything. If I don't answer by midnight, call the police." Brian replied immediately, "Alex, I'm against this. It's too risky." "I love him, Brian. I have to try. Then at least turn on the recording on your phone, just in case." Klaus waited in the hotel bar, nervously sipping whiskey. He had hardly slept in the last few days, tormented by suspicions and fears. A colleague at work had seen Serena again at the same gay bar, and this time she was talking seriously with the same man. Klaus was beginning to think that she had another relationship that she was hiding. Memories of his marriage to Melissa came back to him more and more often. How she had lied to him for months about her feelings, seeing someone else, while he, a blind fool, hadn't noticed a thing. Was history repeating itself? When Alex entered the bar, Klaus felt his heartbeat quicken in a familiar way. She was beautiful, but there was tension in her eyes. "Hi," she said, sitting down across from him. "How are you?" "Fine. Although..." He paused. "Serena, we really need to talk." "I know. That's why I booked a room upstairs. There are things I need to tell you." They went up to the 12th floor. The room was standard. A bed, armchairs, a small table by the window overlooking the city. Alex sat down in an armchair. Klaus remained standing by the window. "Klaus," she began, turning on the voice recorder on her phone with an imperceptible movement. "What I want to tell you may change everything between us." "I'm ready for any truth," he said, though inside he was gripped with fear. Alex took a deep breath. "My real story is complicated. I wasn't always the person you know." "What do you mean?" "Klaus, I'm a transgender woman. I was born in a male body, but I always knew I was a woman. 3 years ago, I began the transition process." Silence hung heavy and thick in the room. Klaus stood motionless, trying to comprehend what he had heard. "What?" His voice was barely audible. "I had surgery, took hormones. I am a woman, Klaus, in every sense except how I was born." Klaus slowly turned to her. His face reflected shock, turning into something darker. "You're a man?" "No, I'm a woman. I've always been a woman, just..." "You lied to me," Klaus exploded. "You lied to me all this time." "I didn't lie about my feelings. Everything between us was real." Klaus began pacing the room like a caged animal. Voices from the past swirled in his head. His father, his classmates, all those who had taught him what it meant to be a real man. "I kissed you. he whispered with disgust. My God, what have you done to me? Klaus, please listen to me. Listen. He turned sharply toward her. You turned me into a gay man. You made me... That's not true. You fell in love with a woman. With me. It doesn't matter what I was like before. It doesn't matter? Klaus's voice grew louder. How does it not matter? Do you think it's okay to deceive people like that? Alex stood up from her chair, sensing the growing danger. I was afraid to tell you. I was afraid of this reaction. And you were right to be afraid, Klaus barked. Because it's disgusting. You're a pervert pretending to be a woman. Don't say that. Alex's voice trembled. You don't understand. Don't understand? I understand perfectly well. You're a mentally ill person who decided to play dress-up at my expense. His father's words echoed in Klaus's head. These perverts are a threat to normal people. They try to trick normal men into becoming sick like them. Klaus, calm down. Let's talk about this like adults. Adults? Adults don't lie about their gender. Adults don't deceive people into thinking they're in love with a woman when in fact, I'm a woman, Alex shouted. Do you understand? A woman. No, Klaus barked, moving closer. You're a man in a dress, a sick pervert. Alex backed toward the door, but Klaus was faster. He grabbed her arm. Let go of me, she said as calmly as she could. Klaus, you're making a mistake. A mistake? The mistake is that I believed you. The mistake is that I thought I was in love. His grip on her arm tightened. Alex saw something wild and uncontrollable in his eyes. You made a fool of me, he hissed. You made me feel sick. You're not sick. What you felt for me was real. Shut up, Klaus shouted and pushed her. Alex fell onto the bed, hitting her head on the headboard. Klaus, stop, she whispered, tasting blood on her lip. But he was already beyond stopping. Years of pent-up anger, the pain of divorce, the feeling of humiliation, it all came pouring out in a fit of rage. You ruined my life, he shouted, striking blow after blow. You turned me into a pervert. Alex tried to defend herself, but Klaus was stronger. She screamed, begged for mercy, but he heard nothing but the voices from the past, insisting that people like her deserved punishment. When it was over, Klaus stood over the motionless body, breathing heavily. The room was silent, broken only by the sound of his breathing. Gradually, the rage subsided, giving way to the horror of realizing what he had done. He looked at his blood-covered hands, then at Alex. She lay motionless, her eyes closed, a thin trickle of blood running from the corner of her mouth. Serena, he whispered. Serena, wake up. But there was no response. Klaus spent the next half hour in a panic, trying to revive the person who had once been most dear to him. But it was too late. Alex was dead. He gathered his things, wiped his fingerprints off the surfaces, and left the hotel through the service exit. The night streets of Austin seemed unreal, like the set of a horror movie. Brian Lee woke up on Saturday morning with an uneasy feeling. Alex hadn't responded to his messages sent at midnight. This wasn't like her. She always let him know she was okay. At 10:30, he couldn't wait any longer. Brian took the key card for the room that Alex had left him just in case and drove to the Hilton Hotel. The drive to downtown took 20 minutes. At the hotel, Brian went up to the 12th floor, his heart beating faster with every step. He stopped at the door of room 1247 and knocked. Alex? Alex, it's me! Silence. Brian put his ear to the door, no sounds from inside. He inserted the key card into the lock, and the door opened. Alex? The room looked ransacked. An overturned chair, scattered belongings, bloodstains on the carpet, and on the bed. Oh my God, Brian whispered as he saw the motionless body of his best friend. He rushed to her, checked her pulse, but knew it was too late. Alex was cold, her eyes closed, her face covered in bruises and abrasions. Brian took out his phone with trembling hands and dialed 911. 911, what emergency do you need? Police. I need the police. I found a body. My girlfriend is dead. Detective Carmen Rodriguez received the call at 11:47 a.m. A murder in a downtown hotel was not the most unusual case for a Saturday morning, but something in the dispatcher's voice made her feel that this would be a difficult case. Carmen had been working in the homicide division for 18 years. At 42, she was one of the most experienced detectives in the department, specializing in hate crimes. A single mother raising 2 teenagers, she knew the value of human life and treated every case as a personal mission. Upon arriving at the hotel, Carmen went up to the 12th floor, where a team of forensic investigators was already at work. The hallway was cordoned off, and guests had been evacuated from the neighboring rooms. "What do we have?" she asked Sergeant Michael Thompson, who was the first to arrive on the scene. A woman, approximately 25-30 years old, found by a friend around noon, apparently beaten to death, no signs of robbery. Carmen entered the room, carefully examining the crime scene. Her experienced eye immediately noticed details that others might have missed. "Signs of a struggle," she said aloud, studying the layout of the furniture. The victim tried to defend herself. Blood on the headboard means the first blow was here. She approached the body. A young woman, beautiful, well-dressed. Multiple injuries to the head and face, but no signs of sexual assault. "Have the forensic team already worked on the body?" "Yes, ma'am. Preliminary conclusion is death from traumatic brain injury. Multiple blows with a blunt object, probably with hands." Carmen nodded, continuing her examination. The victim's phone was on the bedside table. The screen was broken, but the device seemed to be working. "Where's the person who found the body?" "In the lobby, giving a statement to Officer Jones." Carmen went down to the lobby, where a young Asian man sat in a chair with his head in his hands. A police officer with a notebook stood next to him. "Sir?" Carmen approached them. "Lee. Brian Lee." The man raised his head. His eyes were red from crying. "I'm Detective Rodriguez. I need to ask you a few questions." "She was my best friend," Brian whispered. "Who could have done this to Alex?" "Alex? I thought the victim's name was Serena Morgan. That's how she registered at the hotel." Brian looked at the detective in surprise. "Serena is her working name. Her real name is Alexandra Morgan. She worked as an escort." Carmen nodded, writing down the information. "Tell me about last night. When was the last time you saw Alex?" "She texted me around 7 in the evening. She said she was meeting a client at this hotel. I warned her it was dangerous, but she didn't listen." "Did she give the client's name?" "Klaus. That's all I know. She had been seeing him for several weeks." Carmen felt her pulse quicken. A client who had been meeting with the victim regularly, and now she was found dead in a hotel. That was the first clue. "Mr. Lee, I need you to tell me everything you know about this Klaus, and about Alex's work. Every detail could be important." For the next 2 hours, Brian told the detective everything he knew about the last weeks of Alex's life. About her meetings with Klaus, how she fell in love with him, her plans to tell him the truth about herself. "The truth about what?" Carmen asked. Brian paused, struggling with himself. But Alex was dead, and her killer had to answer for what he had done. "Alex was a transgender woman," he said quietly. "She transitioned 3 years ago. Yesterday, she was going to tell Klaus about it." Carmen wrote down the information, feeling the picture of the crime coming together. A transgender sex worker, a client who didn't know about her past, a moment of revelation in a secluded hotel room. She had seen cases like this before. "Mr. Lee, do you have any information about this Klaus? Last name, place of work, anything else?" "Alex said he was a builder, recently divorced, moved to Austin from a small town. That's all I know." Carmen looked at her notes. She had the name, occupation, and general information about the suspect. That was enough to start the search. "Thank you, Mr. Lee. I'll contact you if I need any additional information." Back in her room, Carmen studied the crime scene with a new understanding of what had happened. It was a hate crime committed in a moment of emotional outburst. The killer had not planned the murder in advance. Otherwise, he would not have left so many clues behind. The victim's phone might contain valuable information, correspondence with clients, photos, maybe even a recording of the conversation with the killer. Carmen ordered the device to be sent to technical experts for data recovery. By Saturday evening, Detective Rodriguez already had a clear picture of the crime and a plan for the investigation. Alexandra Morgana had been killed by a client named Klaus after she confessed to him that she was transgender. Now, she had to find this man and prove his guilt. On Sunday morning, Detective Rodriguez arrived at the station at 6:30 a.m., 2 hours earlier than usual. The Alexandra Morgan case had kept her awake all night. In crimes like this, every hour was critical. The killer could disappear or destroy evidence. Carmen's first task was to check the results of the technical examination of the victim's phone. The specialists had worked through the night and were able to recover most of the data, despite the damaged screen. Detective called technician David Chen, handing her the printouts. "We have the victim's correspondence with the suspect via an escort service platform. The last messages were sent on Friday afternoon." Carmen studied the printouts. The correspondence between Serena and a user named Klaus W78 was friendly, almost intimate. Klaus wrote about his feelings, planned future meetings, and confessed his love. The last message from Alex: "Meet me at the Hilton at 7 p.m. I have something important to tell you." "There's another important discovery," Chen continued. "The phone has an automatic call recording feature. The last recording is dated Friday, 7:23 p.m. Carmen felt a rush of adrenaline. "Play it back." Voices poured out of the speakers. First, a calm conversation, then Alex's confession, shock, and Klaus's growing rage. Carmen listened as the man's voice became increasingly aggressive, calling Alex a pervert and sick. Then screams, the sounds of a struggle, blows, and silence. "That's enough for an arrest warrant," Carmen said. "But first we need to establish the suspect's full identity." For the next 3 hours, the team worked to locate Klaus Vber. Austin's construction company databases yielded several people with that name, but only one matched the description: a 35-year-old divorced man who had moved from Fredericksburg 2 months earlier. Klaus Hans Vber, residing in Cedar Park, foreman at Austin Construction. Driver's license, vehicle registration, tax returns, all the data matched. "Let's go," Carmen said to Sergeant Thompson. "We'll take 2 patrol officers for backup." Klaus hadn't slept in 36 hours. Since Friday, he hadn't left his apartment, answered his phone, or eaten. He sat in his chair and tried to understand what had happened to his life in one evening. Memories came back in fragments. Serena was gone. No, not Serena, but Alex telling him the truth. His anger, the feeling of deception, betrayal, voices from childhood. "These perverts are dangerous, son. They try to make normal people sick like them." Klaus looked at his hands. The abrasions were still visible on his knuckles. He had killed a man. For the first time in his life, he had killed another human being, and that fact was slowly but surely sinking into his consciousness. The doorbell made him jump. "Klaus Vber, Austin Police Department." He knew this moment would come. Part of him even breathed a sigh of relief. The anticipation was worse than the arrest itself. Klaus opened the door. Standing in front of him was a woman in a suit and 3 uniformed police officers. "Detective Carmen Rodriguez," the woman introduced herself, showing her badge. "I have a warrant for your arrest on suspicion of the murder of Alexandra Morgan." "I know why you're here," Klaus said quietly, holding out his hands for the handcuffs. At the station, Carmen led Klaus into an interrogation room. It was a small room with a metal table, 2 chairs, and a mirrored glass wall. Klaus sat with his head down, his hands resting on the table. "Mr. Weber," Carmen began, turning on a tape recorder, "you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can be used against you in court. You have the right to an attorney." "I don't need an attorney," Klaus interrupted her. I did it. I killed her. Carmen was surprised by his directness, but continued with the procedure. Tell me what happened on Friday night. Klaus slowly raised his head. His eyes were red, his face gaunt. She told me she used to be a man. And how did you feel? Deceived, betrayed, as if I had been tricked into becoming sick. Klaus's voice trembled. My father always said that people like that are dangerous, that they try to infect normal people with their disease. Alex wasn't sick, Mr. Weber. She was a woman who was born in the wrong body. No! Klaus suddenly snapped. It's unnatural. God created men and women, not this. Carmen saw in his eyes the same rage that had led to the murder. Tell me what happened next. I lost control. I don't remember exactly how it happened. I only remember the anger, and that she was lying motionless. Do you regret what you did? Klaus was silent for a long time. I regret that I couldn't stop myself, but she deceived me. She made me fall in love with her, and then she turned out to be a person who fought for the right to be herself. That's wrong, Klaus repeated stubbornly. A man must be a man. Carmen realized that she was sitting across from a man destroyed by his own prejudices and fears. Klaus was not a monster, but a victim of a toxic upbringing that taught him to hate what he did not understand. The trial lasted 3 weeks. The prosecution classified the murder as a hate crime, which increased the severity of the punishment. Klaus's lawyer tried to get the charge reduced to manslaughter, citing emotional distress, but the audio recording from the victim's phone left no doubt about the motives for the crime. Brian testified as a witness, telling the court about Alex's life, her struggle for self-acceptance, and her fears related to her job, doctor. Harris explained to the jury the characteristics of gender dysphoria and the difficulties faced by transgender people. Alexandra Morgan was a brave woman, she said in her testimony. She fought for the right to live according to her true identity. She deserved understanding, not hatred. Klaus was found guilty of aggravated murder and sentenced to 25 years in prison without parole. A month after the trial, Carmen visited the Rainbow Bar, where a memorial service for Alex was being held. The room was full of people, friends, colleagues, LGBT+ activists. A photo of Alex hung on the wall, smiling, beautiful, full of life. Brian gave a speech. Alex was not just my best friend. She was a symbol of courage for all of us who fight for the right to be ourselves. Her death is a tragedy, but her life is an inspiration. Carmen approached Brian after the ceremony. How are you holding up? It's hard, he replied honestly. But I know Alex would want us to keep fighting. For understanding, for acceptance, so that tragedies like this never happen again. Alex's case changed a lot, Carmen said. The police department has implemented new protocols for dealing with crimes against the LGBT+ community, and the city council has passed a resolution to combat discrimination. That's good, but Alex is gone. Carmen nodded. Justice had been served, the killer punished. But the life of a young woman who simply wanted to love and be loved was lost forever. In prison, Klaus underwent mandatory psychological therapy. Dr. Michael Stevens, the prison psychologist, worked with him to understand the motives behind the crime. Klaus Weber is serving his sentence in a maximum security prison. He continues therapy and participates in a program for those convicted of hate crimes. Perhaps someday he will understand that he did not kill a deceiver, but a brave person who paid with her life for the right to love and be loved. Alexandra Morgan's story has become part of the greater struggle for equality and understanding. Her death was a tragedy, but her life and courage continue to inspire others to be themselves, despite prejudice and danger.